This week, we are discussing astrophotography in the Great Lakes and beyond with Marybeth Kiczenski. You are listening to the LAKESCAPE Photography Podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the LAKESCAPE Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Albert, and I'm excited to bring you this week's discussion with Marybeth Kiczenski. Professional astro-landscape photographer, workshop leader, and world traveler, Marybeth shares some of her favorite moments under the night sky and shares some tips and tricks for those looking to get out there and get into astrophotography themselves. Links to all of the images discussed and Marybeth's work are included in the show notes below. As you enjoy the episode, make sure that you head over there, check out some of her work, and give her a follow. Now let's get into this week's discussion with Marybeth Kiczenski.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun. I've only recently started to kind of get into podcasting world, but I have a lot of fun with it, and I like talking to people, so this is great. I'm Great Lakes based, astrophotographer, aurora chaser, whatever you want to call me. Probably been doing this for about 7 years now, which is hard to believe. Like, thinking back to like 2019 or 2018, you're like, wow, that was a long time ago. Um, so, yeah, I just keep doing it. It's been a lot of fun. I've kind of more got heavy into the space weather stuff. And then, so I need to do more Milky Way stuff. It's funny, like one kind of overtakes the other one, and then you're like, I need to do more of that. I kind of miss it. So yeah, just here for the fun. I'm not very good with introductions, I guess.
No, you're fine. Totally fine. Yeah, I mean, I've been following your work for the last 6-7 years now, and it's always awesome, especially, I like how you captured a lot of places in the Upper Peninsula. You really shot all over the Great Lakes region, and you had a lot of firsts in your work too, where, like, I remember you posted a shot of Agate Falls with the Milky Way and a few different places in the area. That was really cool stuff.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's I always went out west, like a lot of people do with astrophotography, because they got all the, crazy epic landscapes and dark skies. But the Great Lakes has a lot to offer too. And also dark skies if you go for, up in the UP. So I was like, I really want to showcase this place. And that was kind of my goal, was to do like waterfalls or anything that really stood out to me. And Bond Falls is one of my favorite places. I think I go there every time I'm up there. I always stop there. I may not shoot it, but I always stop there just because it's just so pretty. Yeah, and the UP has so many waterfalls to pick from too. So that was kind of like a small obsession at one point, was like, how many waterfalls can I find and shoot it with the Milky Way? So I think I'm at the point where it's all the hard ones now, where you actually have to like hike a long ways or drive, more into the woods. So maybe I'll get back into that this summer, but we'll see where it goes. Of course, the UP is known for northern lights too, because a lot of the Lake Superior shoreline faces north. So it's really it's easier to shoot northern lights there than Milky Way, to be honest, because all the southern facing stuff is more obscured. So you gotta work with the landscapes that direction. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. But I love it up there.
Yeah, it's an awesome spot. Like you said, I mean, the quality of the skies up there, how dark they are, especially on a clear night, you can see so much. And, like you said, there's so many different subjects that you could include with it. It's awesome, especially like Bond Falls. I think that's one of everyone's personal favorite places up there, if you've been up there. And I remember the first night I went there to shoot the Milky Way, it was actually probably around this time, probably, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. It was April, and super early Milky Way. But it was just incredible to sit there and see everything so clearly. You could see the Milky Way like naked eye. Whereas, here in Illinois, where I am, you can see it if you drive far enough west, but it's still pretty faint.
It's the land of light pollution. That's what this state is.
Yes, very much so.
They say it's the land of Lincoln, but it's the land of light pollution. I'm going to change that.
Yeah, we can write a letter.
Yeah, because it's. I would say the dark skies up there do rival that what you'd find out in like Utah. Once you get north of, I want to say it's kind of, what is that, 45th parallel, maybe 45th or 46th. Like once you get above like the main cities like Green Bay, Escanaba, like the last bigger cities, then it's just all like wilderness. And it's really great. I think when you start getting up to the Keweenaw, the only real light pollution source, well, it's Munising and Thunder Bay if you go to the Keweenaw. But beyond that, it's like there's not much. So yeah, you can see every star you can imagine up there, which is like really great.
Yeah, it's perfect for astrophotography and dark skies. Like you said, the northern lights. Actually, the first time I ever saw the northern lights was right there on the shoreline of Union Bay outside of the Porcupine Mountains, and it was interesting because I didn't notice right away. Like it just looked like this weird kind of grayish white mark on the sky, and I was like, what is that? So I took my camera and I pointed it at it, and the camera picked it up way better, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's the northern lights. So here I am at like midnight running around in my pajamas in Union Bay trying to set up on the shoreline, but it was cool to see it.
Yeah, I have a very similar story. I was driving back from Tequamanon Falls, actually. I was doing some Milky Way stuff there and driving back, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and it's the same type of thing. I was like, what is that weird grayish blob that's like, and that's just, it was kind of, it had a shape to it, but not really. And, I'd pull over and the same thing, you get the camera on, you're like, what? It's all green. You're like, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And it was that moment where I was like, I need to chase this now. And that was my descent into darkness.
that's what sparked it all.
It was because there was a Steve out that night. Like it was for the first time seeing Aurora and then getting a Steve and all, and like some crazy air glow and stuff. It was pretty wild. So I was like, well, this is neat. How do I see this more? And then you quickly realize that it's not that easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's you see it once and you're like, this is incredible. Is it, you go down that rabbit hole and you're like, does this happen every night? And then you realize how rare it actually is. And you're like, okay, well, now I want to chase this. I want to figure out more. I want to learn more. And then before you know it, you're hooked. You're out there chasing all the time.
I know. And then you go to Alaska every March.
Yeah, you just got back from Alaska.
I did. And it's a great place to go if you just want to. Yeah, so Alaska is an interesting place. It's kind of like the UP, but on steroids. That's the way I like to describe it because it's a lot of nothing up there, which is good. And you have your main towns, which has everything in it, but it doesn't take, you drive 20 minutes out of the way and you're in there's nothing, absolutely nothing. And, but it's Fairbanks area is directly under the Aurora Oval. So as long as it's clear, Aurora's out every single night. So you could chase it. I think we were all in the Fairbanks area. Well, at least the hardcore chasers always go up there in March and they kind of do these shifts. Like they come in different weeks or whatever. Some stay up there the whole month. So the entire, I think I was there for 10 days ish. We saw it every night. So, and it's just cool watching it because you're under the oval, so you can actually kind of watch it come in. And you're like, because it kind of comes from the east and just sort of kind of rotates over. It's really neat. And then varying degrees of activity, so you don't even really need activity up there to see it. I mean, it's granted it'll be like a green band overhead, not doing much, but yeah, you don't even have to look at the forecast. It's just
it's
going to be
there.
out. I mean, you can if you want. Like if you want to catch, you can get into the whole science behind substorm chasing, which is a whole nother topic in and of itself. And that's where you where it flares up and it gets really dynamic. Because that'll happen throughout the night too. But yeah, that's why I always tell people, I'm like, if you just want to see it, just go to Fairbanks. It's easy to get to, if you're US based. And the weather is generally better there. Now, granted, the landscapes, if you're really looking for dynamic landscapes, the southern part of Alaska is better. You have the mountain ranges, you have the Chugach Range and the Alaska Range, and where Denali and stuff is. But you're outside of the oval now, so you actually need a little bit more activity to see it, and you have mountains in the way. So then it's got to crest the mountains. So, and then the third thing, Anchorage area, and then on the other side of that mountain range is notorious for weather and clouds and that kind of stuff. So those three things work against you going southern Alaska. Fairbanks actually had more. It reminds me, like I said, a lot of the UP. It's a lot of boreal forests and lakes and things like that. So you have some things to work with, but it's not as easy as Denali or something that's like in your face. And then the other one is everybody shoots is something called the Enchanted Forest. And it's the snow trees, the snow-covered trees, which I learned is actually frost. It's frost buildup on them. But that is up a sketchy road called the Dalton Highway, and it's about 4.5 hours from Fairbanks. So in the wintertime, you have to be real careful up there because it's heavily trafficked with trucks, semi-trucks, because it's a haul road for the pipeline. But it's known for flat tires, it's known for cracked windshields and all this kind of stuff. So you just have to be more cautious and prepared. And there's like 3 gas stations, and each one is about 300 miles apart.
Make sure you top off at every one.
Yes. So you have to be a little more conscious of your planning when you go up that way. But you start to get into the other mountain range called the Brooks Range, which is really pretty too. So I say it's not for the faint of heart, especially if you're not used to winter driving or we're driving on ice roads, because a lot of times it's ice. But it's one of those things that's worth it if you have the nerves to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds incredible. Like aurora every night and incredible landscapes. Like, what's not to love? I mean, other than the fact that it seems like the landscape is simultaneously trying to take you out as you're trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, it can. I think that's part of the allure of that area is it is kind of like going back in time where things haven't been touched yet. And so there is that degree of danger up there. And this could, I'm like, should I really be up here? Especially when it's like minus 40 or like when you start getting up to the Brooks Range, the wind chills can be like minus 70 or 80 at times. So it can be real brutal and you have to be very careful. And I will go into this too, because the accommodations, there's this, since it's a haul road and it was designed for truckers and workers, there's a truck stop in this place called Coldfoot, and it has a hotel. I'll say that in quotes because they're basically converted containers, and it's like being in a dorm room, but kind of worse. And it's $300 a night.
Oh,
but
no.
Because it's the only thing available, that this is what you have to do with. But the truck stop food is really, really good. So there's that.
Consolation prize.
Yeah, really good food. But if you don't mind going back to college days and being in a dorm room and smelling of diesel fuel because that's how they heat it. Yeah.
That
Coldfoot.
It adds to the experience.
It does. It is kind of like a true Alaskan experience for anybody that goes up there and does it. It's like you'll never forget it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds incredible. Like not only is it true wilderness, but it's like true wilderness with a little bit of everything that makes it authentic and enjoyable, but also a lot of other dangerous things.
Yes. So this year was really strange because Alaska had a very warm winter. So this is another weird thing. I know we're going off on tangents here, but another weird thing about Alaska and their road system. So they don't use salt up there on the roads. And if they have a typical very cold, dry winter, they have a very dry type of ice. And so when they get the base down on the road and it takes the moisture out, this ice actually has a bit of grip to it. However, if you have a warmer winter like they did this year, in fact, Anchorage has no snow on the ground. There was more snow in Florida than in Anchorage. But Fairbanks had some, but not like their usual snow. So they had this big freeze thaw thing every day where it would get above freezing and it would thaw. So the ice on the roads was worse this year than it has been in years. So it's a bit more treacherous driving up there. I went to Chena Hot Springs, which is another tourist area, but I've never been there. So I was like, I need to go here. If I wouldn't have made the reservation in November, I would have not have done it because it was 20 miles on a pure ice road with no grip. I questioned my whole life's decisions at the point. But the good thing was it's a straight road. There's no stop, like there's no like there's hardly any traffic, and there's no like panic stops, like stoplights or whatever. It's just straight. And there's little curves here and there. So as long as you keep a good momentum and don't make any sudden moves, you can kind of get through it. But I was not a fan of that drive, and they do it there and back. But yeah, even at the resort, they're like, yeah, it's a little dangerous. Like they were just kind of writing it off like, whatever, it's fine. No, just take your time. It's fine. I'm like,
just another day in Alaska.
yeah. But they all said the same thing. They said because of the fact that it was they had rain in January, which is just like weird. And yeah, they're like, the freeze thaw cycle just kills it, the road conditions up there, which is interesting. Like they actually want that span of really negative temperatures, and it makes it a little easier to deal with. So there's that, my little travel tips for anybody going up to Alaska.
Hey, it's good stuff to know. I mean, a lot of us, we all dream of going to Alaska to chase night skies, the northern lights. I mean, if I could, I would go up there right after this episode and drop everything I'm doing. But, unfortunately, responsibility, it kind of rings in the back of your mind like, yeah, well, I could, but then I'm going to have a lot of problems when I come home. So,
and then well, if it helps you, at least now they're going into they're starting to lose the night at a very fast clip. Like, what is it, 26th? In about a month, they'll have no nighttime again.
Wow.
So it'll be like civil twilight, I think, is all they get. When you get the Arctic Circle, that's 66 degree, that's where you get the 24 hours of true daylight, where the sun never goes below the horizon. It just does a circle.
That's that. I mean, I feel like it'd be cool to see, but
yeah, right.
After like a month, I'd be like, okay, this is.
Yeah. Like, this is a bit much.
Yeah. I don't know about this anymore. That's awesome, though. I mean, it's great that you had a good trip up there, and that you guys got to see the Northern Lights. I actually think I saw a post of yours where you could see, I think it was a full moon, and you could still see a very prominent display.
Actually, it's so because of the location, like down here, the full moon hinders your visual sight of it. It just does, because we're so far away from the oval itself. But since up there you're under it, you're pretty much at the source. The full moon doesn't even, I mean, it phases it, yes, but you can see it. And in fact, you can see the color more. It's like you can see the color easier with the moon. That has to do with the fact that when you're under moonlight, it activates, I always get these mixed up, but I think it's rods is your color vision. So it actually activates your rods a little bit more, so you can see the green better with the moon. It's really cool. Like, I don't discourage people at all. Like, because people are like, well, what if I go up there and it's a full moon? I'm like, you'll see it. Trust me, you will see it. It's actually kind of cool because it lights the foregrounds up for you. You can use the shadows to your advantage. And it actually puts a blue tint in the sky, which I think goes well with the green. So I don't know. I've really kind of liked the moon up there more than the moonless nights, just from experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the same thing down here too, where, if you catch the moon at the right part of its cycle, then you can use the moonlight to light your foreground and then basically wait and let the Milky Way rise to wherever you want it, and then shoot the Milky Way and just combine the exposures. And it's really neat how you can kind of utilize that in different ways. And up there, it having an effect on the color and just every aspect of it, that'd be really cool to see.
Yeah, and I didn't time it this way, but we were there for the lunar eclipse, which ended up being really cool. I just edited I put the little composite together today of like the phases. Um, because seeing aurora with the lunar eclipse was really neat. It was quite cool.
I remember you posting the shot of the back of the camera on that one. I think I saw it, and I remember just sitting there thinking to myself, like, how cool would it be to have seen that in person? Like, you have the fully eclipsed moon, you have the aurora, just
Yeah, it was definitely a neat experience, and then watching it, like, how it changes, because it got dark again, so you start to see more of the details in the aurora and the sky, and then when it comes back out, like, how much of that the light just comes back. So it's just it was a very neat experience. The display we had, the aurora display, was it caught me a little off guard because I didn't think we were gonna get as great of a display as we ended up getting. So, like, I had the telephoto on at first, and then I was like, "Nope, I have to switch this," because, like, it started to do some crazy things. It was like those giant undulations and, like, I was like, "Stop it." So I had to go with a wide angle. Yeah, but I managed because the eclipse part of it was 30 minutes or so. So I was able to go back and put the telephoto back on, but it was a panic moment for a second.
yeah, when you realize like, oh wow, there's this amazing opportunity and I'm not
Yeah.
capitalizing on it, and then you're scrambling in the dark trying to swap
Yes.
lenses.
Yeah. And you're like, I don't know what to do. I wasn't expecting the word to be like this.
Right, right. I think we've all been there where all of a sudden you realize like, hey, this is gonna work, and then you're trying to not lose your dark adaptation by flipping a white light on, and you're trying to use a red light or no light. I actually just when it was actually the eclipse here, I was just shooting it in my backyard and it was dark. I had my bag sitting there, and I went to swap over from my 70 to 200 to my 180 to 600 to put it on my tracker. And I was so busy paying attention to the moon that I just I thought I lined the bodies up, and I went to turn it, and I thought it was on there, and I like went to pick it up, and I'm looking at my hands. I'm like, why is it not connected? Thankfully, I realized that I had missed the connection before I let go of the body, because I would have dropped it. But yeah,
Well, that's good.
you 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 run into these situations where you're like so excited and so in the moment that sometimes you get ahead of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, it's happened to me many times, so I understand.
It's part of the astrophotography experience.
It really is. Like, sometimes I'll think to myself, I'm like, am I really this much of a hack? Like, I'm like, I don't remember how to do these basic things.
Hey, we all go through it. We do. I mean, there's been times where I can't get like my tracker lined up just right, and I'm like, what am like do I why am I even out here? Like this
Yeah. Like, what am I doing?
yeah, like I'm shooting at 20 millimeters and I'm still getting star trails. Like how am I screwing this up? Like what's happening?
Yep. All too much, all too often sometimes. So, but then it works out somehow.
Right. It always works out. Well, what drew you to astrophotography and shooting astro landscapes?
Yeah. So this is an interesting little tidbit because, like, I started with drag racing photography, and I still do it here and there, but not to the degree. And it was always about cars. And it was weird. I was coming back from one of these car events, like car meet things down in, it's kind of by where Starved Rock is. And I don't know what possessed me to put the camera out on the ground and just take a long exposure of the sky, but I did. And I was like, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because up until that point, I thought like you had to have telescopes and all this expensive stuff to do astro anything. Because I've always liked space and things like that, but I didn't think you do it with a regular camera. I just didn't. And so that opened my eyes to a whole different world. And then before you know it, this was with my old D3S that I had. Because I was doing drag race stuff, so I wanted the fast camera. But within like 6 months, I had a different camera and a star tracker. And, I was like full in on this because you start going down the rabbit hole online and you're like, well, how do I make this better? And you're like, well, obviously I need a tracker and I need another camera because the D3S was very dated at that time. I mean, I think it came out in 2009 and then this was like 2019. So it's a 10-year-old body. Um, so yeah, I ended up with a D850, which then I found out you didn't really need it something that extreme. In fact, the high megapixel cameras are not favored for the astro stuff. You really wanted something in like the 20 to 30 range. So I ended up with the Z6. I broke the D850, so now I have some Sony. So I have a Nikon and Sony system, but yeah. So it just snowballed from there.
Yeah, it's awesome how that works though. You get your first shot and like you said, you're hooked. And
Yeah.
it's just, how do I build from here?
Right.
And it's very similar for me. I just on a whim one night in literally the middle of Wisconsin, I just took a picture at night and I saw it and I was hooked. And now whenever I get clear skies here in Illinois, which we all know is not typical,
No.
but when we do get them, I try. So
Yeah.
that's awesome though, that you just took that chance and now, your work has grown. Your work is incredible to say the least. I mean, you've traveled all over the place and, your photos of the night sky, they're just, you can tell when it's one of your images. It's very dreamlike and ethereal and well put together. I really like your photography, your style. What do you feel makes astrophotography different from other types of landscape photography other than the night sky?
Yeah. I think that's part of the fun of it too, is because you're taking pictures of things that we can't see very well to begin with. It kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to do things with. Um, so like you mentioned, and it was funny because I remember talking to Royce Bear about this, like when I first started. He's like, yeah, eventually you'll find a style that you fall into. And then, and he's right. Like eventually it's like you do enough of it and then you end up like, you don't even realize it's happening. Like you're like, all of a sudden everything just kind of takes this route. And for me, astro type images have always been in the realm of dreamy, because it's stuff that's beyond our own eyesight limitations. So I've always gravitated towards that type of feel. And it actually, it's cool that it's coming across because sometimes I don't know. But I think that's what I like the most about it is it kind of gives you this freedom. You're not like chained to what we see, like in like typical landscape type stuff. It's like, hey, this is what, even though I know you can edit typical landscapes in a very artistic fashion, I know a number of people do. But I think you have more freedom in the night world because of the fact that we're taking pictures that are enhanced by a camera because it can see way more than we can. And then if you couple that with a tracker, now you have all these colors that come out. So you can really work with those colors to your advantage with, whatever the foreground elements are. So that's kind of where I've gone with it.
Yeah, no, it works. It works very well. And, especially with the tracker, we'll get into more about trackers and all this stuff here. So we don't lose everybody right up front, but, yeah, I mean that it works so well. And I think it's something that all of us kind of feel the same way about it. I like that you said that the night sky kind of has that ethereal, dreamlike feel to it. And it just, for lack of a better term, it works really well in those images. And it's a totally different approach where, you know, landscape photographers, maybe they're hoping for a great sunrise, a great sunset, or like dramatic storm clouds. And astrophotographers are the exact opposite of, we
Right.
want no clouds. We just want to see the stars.
Yes, exactly. So it's been fun. And yeah, it's, once you get past so this is the other, and I'm sure you've run into this too, because you get like the purists out there who are like, if it's not a single image, then it's not photography. And I fell into that for a little bit too. And then the more I talk to other people that have been doing this for a long time, even the ones that are straight up landscape people, because let's face it, a lot of the landscape stuff that people really gravitate towards on the internet, a lot of times those are combined images, and there's a lot of editing done to them that's very drastic from the raw image. Um, so yeah, once I was able to kind of get past that and then the criticism from it and be like, you know what, this is an art form. It's fine. It's not photojournalism. I'm not out there recording an event or whatever. Um, it really kind of helps with your own vision and what you want to have displayed, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I went down that same road myself because when I first started, I would sit there and I'd think to myself, how are these guys getting these incredible shots in a single image? Like the foreground's lit perfectly, the Milky Way's so well pronounced. How are they doing that? And then I went down the rabbit hole just like you, and I was like, okay, well, they're tracking the sky. They're blending it in. What are they blending it into? Well, they're blending it into a blue hour shot. Okay, that makes sense. It's more evenly lit. And then, there's all kinds of different techniques and approaches. And even in camera, like I went down the Astro modified camera route and just, there's so much. But I agree entirely. Those that are interested in astrophotography don't think you have to do it all in a single image, because I struggled with that same thing too myself. And I finally was like, I get so much better results. I can be more creative. We're not shooting, like you said, for photojournalism. We're out there having fun.
Yeah, exactly. So once you get, I still get, the hate for some people, but it's like, it is what it is. It's like you're working with the limitations of the gear. Um, it just is what it is. You just can't do both, at least right now. Maybe eventually we will, because every camera body, like every generation has been getting better and better and better with like the noise and things like that. But right now, no. Like if you want that sharp front to back image with like, the details, you have to combine them. And then you have like the focus stacking because, well, and that's true with the typical landscape stuff too. Like the focus stacking and that kind of stuff's been used in real landscape photography forever. Because if you want that front to back focus, you have to work with that aperture. But let's face it, at night, you don't want to shoot at f8 or f11
Yeah.
unless you leave it open for like 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah. You're going to have star trails. You're going to have all kinds of problems.
Yeah. So it's like, no, it's just not possible. I mean, okay, it's possible, but like I said, you have to leave it open for like 30 minutes.
Right. Right. And that's, in a shot that I actually just shared, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago. It was the Northern Lights. I shot them back in October at Union Bay there in the Porcupine Mountains. And in that shot, I don't know how I managed this. Well, I mean, part of it was being at 14 millimeters, but I shot the scene, I think it was 20 or 30 seconds. And I got just a little bit of star trailing in there, but like the aurora was super well pronounced, and I somehow managed to get my foreground in focus at f2.8, and I was like, you know what, I'm not questioning it. It
Yeah,
worked. This was dumb luck, and I'm happy with it.
right, exactly.
For those that want to get started in this kind of stuff, obviously it all starts with dark skies and finding them. Like we touched on, Illinois, kind of light pollution in a lot of places, but when you are considering dark sky sites and where the best viewing conditions may be at, what are you thinking about? What are you looking for out there?
So yeah, for me, I usually go north of here, but you don't have to go too terribly far. Well, I guess I should preface this. I'm outside of Chicago, so I'm in a worse spot than you are. But um, but Door County is one of my favorite spots because it's only 3.5 hours from here, and you can get into a solid like Bortle 3. And if you go up to the tip of it, it's like a 2, which may or may not be true anymore. It seems like that's been getting worse with the light pollution, but I know there's some people trying to fight it, help keep it a dark sky area. But that's like an easy place to go for a lot of people that are in this Chicagoland area. If you go south, like Kankakee, I think there are some spots down there that are relatively okay, but still like Bortle 4, where it's still hard to see the Milky Way. You kind of have to look for like the Roa Fuki, which I'm probably saying wrong. So you have to look for that constellation because it's not as pronounced like when you're in a darker sky area. That tends to work, or out west, like Ottawa area where Starved Rock is decent. Um, but my favorite places is the Upper Peninsula and Upper Minnesota and Upper Wisconsin because that's where you can get the Bortle 2 and some places even a Bortle 1, like in the middle of Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. And it's just, yeah, you can't beat that. But it's 6-hour drive, give or take 6-7 hours, so that's more of a commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, when you realize, you've got to take a bit of a cruise to make it
Yeah,
happen, but the skies out there are worth it. And I'm a little further west than you are, and
yeah,
for me, if I drive like 45 minutes to an hour west, I can get to some pretty decent spots that you can see enough, but it's not like you said, like up in northern Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula, all along the North Shore there. And like you said, it all really depends on that Bortle scale, which for those that aren't familiar, basically a Bortle 1 is perfect, clear, dark skies, and a Bortle 9 is literally being at like the Bean in Chicago and looking up and
yes.
saying, well, I see like maybe Jupiter if it's
Yeah,
out.
you see I don't know, I think on a clear night here, it's like, wow, I can see all 12 stars.
Yeah. Yeah. I I actually remember when I first got into photography, I went downtown Chicago and I shot, it was somewhere along the Chicago River, and I was looking up at the L, and I took a long exposure shot and I got like 3 stars in it, and I was all proud of myself for it.
Yeah, because that's
And
like all there is.
yeah, yeah, when you're somewhere that bright, like if you guys want to see this stuff, you got to get away from city lights, stay away from industrial centers, you know,
Yeah,
all that
the
stuff.
the one thing that caught me off guard was the oil fields in North Dakota. Those things throw off a lot of light, more than you think, and they're not picked up on the light pollution maps. So, because the light pollution maps are dated, and they're adding more and more of these oil rigs or whatever up in North Dakota. So that was kind of surprising.
You get somewhere and you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be perfect. And then
Yeah, and
set
you're
the
like,
camera
wait
up.
a minute.
Yeah. You set the camera up, take your first shot, and you're like, what is all of this glow?
Yeah, it was pretty wild to see because they're just, I guess that's the next big oil field, or from what I read, is in North Dakota. So they're putting more and more of them in up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like that's the thing is even out here, there's been windmill farms going in all over the place, and they've got those red lights on top of them. And I didn't think much of it, but I went out, set up, and I thought, oh, how cool would it be to get the Milky Way with these windmills? So I was trying to take long exposures on a tracker, And when I brought the images back and basically stacked them all on the computer, it was pretty washed out from those red lights. They don't seem that bright, but at 45 seconds to a minute on a tracker, they get pretty bright.
They do. It's like, oh, well, that's fun.
Yeah. Well, one more thing that I've learned, don't shoot at any kind of light.
Yes. So yeah, it's been those learning. Like the other thing is to look out for those greenhouses that are going up everywhere too, because that's been an ongoing thing, and the conversion to LED lights. So because the city lights have gotten brighter because they're converting everything to LED, and then that also negates the effectiveness of people using light pollution filters because that's a different wavelength than the sodium vapor that was the old street lights. So there's a couple more things to look out for.
Yeah. I didn't realize that the light pollution filters wouldn't work on LED lights, but it makes sense that it's a different wavelength, so it wouldn't cut it.
Yep. So when people ask me about light pollution filters, I'm like, yeah, it's not really worth the money now because so many cities are converting to LED.
Yeah. Yeah. And they actually just put one of those greenhouse things not too far from where I live. And there's always posts online of, hey, it's the Northern Lights. And
Yeah,
no,
it's like, no. Like
no.
I should have said greenhouse
Yeah.
because it's like a purpley color. It's a very kind of Northern Lights-ish color.
Yeah,
So it throws people off because it's UV light.
exactly. They see it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the Northern Lights. Like, no, unfortunately, it's just this reddish purple glowing box in the middle of a field out there.
Yeah.
But
Because more and more of those things are going up too. And like I was saying, the light pollution maps are not updated. So these are the older, I think the 2018 is the last time, like on lightpollutionmap.info, I think it's 2018 was the last time it was updated. So things have changed a little.
yeah, just more challenges we need to learn to overcome out there. Once people find a good dark sky site, we've kind of touched on a few different ways to capture the Milky Way, from single images to trackers. What is some essential gear you would recommend to someone that wants to get started without taking that big dive right in?
So yeah, actually stacking. For a newbie that doesn't want to get into the tracking and the extra baggage that comes with, using stacked images is a great way to go. And there's a bunch of free software out there, like Starry Landscape Stacker isn't free, but it's the Mac version. I forget what the PC one is.
Sequator.
Crap, Sequator, yeah, and that one's free. So all that is taking the same image sequentially, like 10, 15 of them, and you stack them together, and that helps with the noise. You still have to blend it with the foreground, but it's easier because you're not dealing with 1-2 minute exposures where that foreground is really blurred. You're just stacking them together, so it's a little easier to deal with blending them too. And then you don't have to buy anything else. You just use your camera that you have. So I like that. For people just starting to getting into it, any modern camera is great. Doesn't matter what brand, anything made probably within the last 10 years, because that would have been what, 2015, should suffice. And the biggest thing is just getting a lens a good lens. A good lens is more important than the camera body itself. So if you get like a lens that's like a 1.8 or 2, or now they make 1.4 or 1.2 lenses, anything that's really fast like that, you'll have way more better images than dealing with kit lenses that aren't as sharp, or they only go to f4, because then you kind of need a tracker if f4 is all you have, because then you have to boost the ISO up to a million
Yeah.
to compensate for it. So that's my advice for the beginners, is just you can use what you have. Just get a good lens and stacking, and then before you know it, you'll have a tracker, because once you track, you never go back.
I like that
However,
saying.
I will say I still stack things here and there, because sometimes you're just in a situation where this is all you got. So it's helpful to know all these different techniques, because you never know when you'll use them. Or let's say your tracker just decides not to work, because I've had that happen before. where it just, I don't know, maybe I forgot a battery, or I had that little move, shoot, move thing for a while. I heard the new one is better, but the older one, like it wouldn't charge anymore. So, so I was like, I had that happen and I'm like, well, I guess I'm stacking tonight because this thing won't work. So, so things like that, it's really helpful to know these different techniques because then you can still get something out of your time versus nothing.
Right. Yeah. And, that's excellent advice. And I actually started in astrophotography that same way. I started with single images and then I learned stacking. And then, like you said, eventually you end up with a tracker and then you put the pieces together of, well, I can stack and track at the same
Yeah,
time and get
and
even more detail. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you've got a whole new camera bag full of goodies that you want to go out and shoot the night sky with.
right. And then your camera bag weighs 50 pounds and it's like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
this
What?
was supposed to be easy and relaxing, and now I'm lugging around a 50-pound backpack.
Right. How did I get here? But it's fun. It's rewarding. It's especially when you get out there and a shot that you had envisioned comes together in just the right way, or at least close enough. It's I think it's one of the most rewarding things because I'm sure and can share some experience and expertise, but it requires a lot of planning and preparing and really creativity because you kind of have to envision it before you even approach it.
Yeah, you do. Um, like a lot of times, yeah, I will have a vision in mind, and you're right. When it does come together, it's like, oh, yay! I love it when a plan comes together. Um, I did an image this past fall that was like that. It was there's a app. There's a couple planning apps. There's Photo Pills, which is something everybody uses, but then there's another one called Planet Pro, which is a little more technical, but it can do more things. Like you can plan like different nebulas even, or like Orion. It does more than Milky Way, which is nice. So I had this. There's a lighthouse in Minnesota that I really like called Split Rock Lighthouse, and the Rosette Nebula actually in Planet Pro, you can see it. It lined up really well with the top of the lighthouse in September. And I was sitting on the couch in Planet Pro in March, and I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And it's because this is the cool thing about Planet Pro is it actually has VR, which is different than augmented reality. So it's got like little, like it's even got the lighthouse itself in there, so you can actually see these different things line up with it. So I planned it in Planet Pro. I was like, "Okay, I got to be there in September for this to happen, and it's going to be a 300 millimeter shot." And I was going to use my astro modified camera plus the H alpha filter on it because the Rosette Nebula is basically all H alpha. And and then I had to find a lens because I could use the 100 to 400, but that lens is only a 4.5 f4.5. Luckily, I have a buddy that's a Sony shooter. His name's Drew out in Utah, and he's like, "Well, I can let you use my 300 millimeter 2.8." He shipped it to me, which was really cool. And because it weighs about the same, because that's the other thing with the trackers is they kind of have a payload limit. Um, I think I was at the limit of this with this big 300 millimeter on it, but it weighs the same as the 100 to 400 because So I had this big old lens on it, and so many things have to work when you start working with these long focal lengths. It really changes the dynamics. Like everything has to be good. Like the slightest breeze would have screwed this whole thing up because everything is just much more sensitive at those types of focal lengths. So luckily it was a clear, very calm night over Lake Superior. It's like Lake Superior almost looked like glass. Like like how rare is that? So I was able to get the amount of the subs that I needed. However, because I was kind of at the limit of what that tracker can do, I could only do like 1.5 minute exposures before it started to lose the tracking. But if you do enough of them, which I think I had 10 minutes of RGB and then like 10 minutes of H alpha and was able to put them together. So seeing that come together was really rewarding because that was probably one of the most planned out shots I've done in a long time.
Yeah. But I mean, by the sounds of it, there was a lot of moving pieces in that. And like you
Yeah,
said,
it all had to work out.
right. And, that's something that, you don't think about in like day-to-day landscape photography. Like, yeah, okay, I can shoot at 100 millimeters, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever hundreds of millimeters. But once you're doing astrophotography, like if you're shooting at 14 millimeters, sure, you can take a 10-second exposure without getting star trails. But if you're shooting at 200 millimeters, well, you might get like 1.5 seconds before you get trails. And that's when trackers are so essential and aligning it is critical.
Yes, it's very critical at that. Like I've been lucky with the laser pointer up till 200 millimeter, and that's really lucky. And most of the time, you have to be more precise at 200 millimeter, but anything past that, you really have to be dead on with the polar alignment. Like you actually kind of have to do the real polar alignment where you're looking through the reticule and like trying to. It's a whole different thing. The laser pointer trick doesn't work as well when you start getting those deeper focal lengths.
But it gets you close enough for
Yeah,
everything else. And
for everything else. Yeah,
I've
like
done the same.
them real wide shots, like if you do like 14, 12 or whatever, you can literally kind of point the thing north and it'll track pretty decent.
just a rough alignment, like, well, this
Yeah,
is
just a
north.
rough north and
Yeah.
it'll probably be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that up in the Upper Peninsula. There was an instance a couple years ago where I was literally in the middle of 64 and I realized I'd left my compass back at camp and I was like, well, I know north is this way, so I'm just going to point the tracker this way and hope for the best, and it worked. But,
Yeah, it worked.
I
You
was
might
at
not
like
be able to do like 2 minutes, but you don't really need it.
right.
So,
I think I was at like 16 millimeters, so, when you're at those wider focal lengths, it's you can get away. It's a lot more forgiving.
yes, very much so. So like it's easiest but like if you're in a cave or something like that where you can't see Polaris, so yeah, you can just kind of really rough it and be fine. So that's yeah, it's a luxury. And you start doing these long telephoto stuff and you're like, wow, this is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, so suddenly you're like, okay, well, I need to get really good at polar aligning. And, I think that's one of the biggest things, the biggest maybe barriers for people who aren't familiar with astrophotography is the actual tracker itself. And polar aligning it, using it, I know it's yeah, on the front end, it seems super confusing. I was
You're right.
confused when I got my
I was
first
too.
one. Yeah. But then like once you figure it out, it's like second nature. It's just like using your camera.
Yeah, it really is. And then once you figure out like, oh, that's it. I remember when it finally clicked and I'm like, why was I making this so much worse? Like,
Yeah. Why did I overcomplicate this whole
yeah,
thing?
like it's pretty easy. But now they have these new tools out, like this Benro Polaris, where it just kind of it uses like computer input to like polar align. I'm intrigued by this device. I haven't bit the bullet on it yet because I think it's like $1,000. And then I heard like people had some issues with it at first, and I think they solved a lot of the issues. It doesn't come with a manual, so it's like it's it's a bit of a daunting task to learn how to use it, but it's got some trick features in it, like the polar alignment where it uses like an app to figure it out. And then like you can use it for panos. Like you can tell it, I want a pano from wherever your left point to the right point. You tell how many images you want, and you just let it do its thing. And you just walk away from it. So like it's got some cool built-in features, but I just I've been a little hesitant on it. And the old Star Adventure works.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I've looked into the Polaris. I actually had a opportunity to use one like probably 2 or 3 years ago now. A friend of mine actually has one and we put my Z6 II on it and for whatever reason we couldn't get it to communicate and he had his he shoots Sony and he put his on there and he showed me how it does a pano and how it figures out where it is. And I mean, it's a really cool tool, but like you said, I've always used the Ioptron Sky Guider Pros. I know how to use it. So I just stick with it because I'm like, hey, if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And they're tried and true, and like this, I've never had the Star Adventurer fail on me, and I've beaten mine up pretty good, tripping on things and whatever. But I'll just say it's been bounced off a few rocks here and there, and it's still fine. It's still fine. So, it's hard to give that up.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
durable. It lasts. It can, do, it can do what you need it to do. And, if there were options out there that you would recommend for people that are interested in trackers, I presume it would likely be the Star Adventurer.
Yeah, it'd be that one or the Ioptron because those two have been around the longest. They're easy to use. They don't have issues with, you know, the communications of different devices and things like that. And so it's which can add to the frustration if you're trying to learn how to track, eh, like first you have to learn how to do it. And then if you add on all these different options with the computerized controls and stuff, it can just frustrate the crap out of you. So it's like, just start with the simple stuff and then work your way up to the fancy newfangled devices that can do all these things.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I've shot next to someone and it's actually kind of funny because I've literally set up my little Sky Guider Pro next to people with like $30,000 William Optics rigs ran by like MacBook Pros and
Right.
just the lens that they're using attached to their cooled Astro camera. It's like, this is worth my car. Like, this is fine. And
Yeah.
here I am with a Z6 II and a 70-200. Like, yes,
Right.
I'm shooting some too.
Yeah, it's like it's easy, it's simple, it works. Like, sure, if you want to go down that deep sky route, then yeah, that is the way to go because that's how you get those, you know, basically Hubble's telescope like type image quality. But you don't have to do it. You don't have to go that deep unless you really, really want to.
Right. That's the thing is, you know, for those that don't know, like there's really two different types of astrophotography. There's deep sky objects and then there's wide field. And depending on who you ask, wide field is by most standards going to be considered like, I would say 200 millimeters and below.
Yeah,
But
I think that's fair.
yeah, I mean, because some of those guys, they've got like 900 millimeter lenses that are like, they're cool, but you can't really include the landscape in that kind of stuff. I mean, you could, but it would be a challenge. And, you know, for those interested in getting started, like you said, just a basic camera setup and a fast lens is going to be really the best starting point for most. And just start wide and kind of work your way in. And, if, like you said, if you want a tracker, you can go that route. And we've touched on Astro modified cameras here too. I've always told people, like, if you're really into it, that's something to look into. But I mean, what's your opinion on Astro modified cameras?
I think that's what you said too. I have an Astro. Actually, I got two Astro modded cameras and one regular one. And the um, the problem with the Astro modded camera, and you can filter it, so you can put a filter back on it, but it's an added step. It's like you can't. And I've used it for regular landscapes, but you can't. So, like any images where you have like the sun or a very bright light source in the image, the modded camera has a very, very strange moiraying effect that you can't get rid of. So that camera I can't use for sunrises or sunsets or even the moon. If it's in the shot, like it's got to be the other direction. Um, so I have the regular camera still for like the daytime stuff. And people like you can put a filter on it, but I'm like, well, that's an added step, and then you have a filter. It's just so Astro Modified is great if you really want to get into this stuff, but you don't need it. I got it for you doing more stuff with Orion, because it can see more. Um, it just can. and it's visible plus H alpha. So it's not like a full modded camera because you can do a fully converted camera where it lets everything in. But then, that's great if you're for those people, like say you want to do infrared or, some other stuff, because that opens that door because you can just put the different filters on it. So you do infrared, you can do the astro stuff. So if you want to go down that route, that's an option. But those are those niche market things. So not everybody's in the infrared or, stuff like that. So the visible plus H alpha still gives you latitude because it gets tricky with the white balance with the Astro modded cameras. Like mine, you can do a gray card and kind of get it back. It's very easy to fix in post. So I haven't really bothered too much with it. So everything's got this red cast to it because I know I can get rid of it. But when you're like, when I'm shooting next to somebody, and this happened a couple weeks ago, he's like, "What white balance do you have?" I'm like, "Oh, this is Astro modified, so ignore it." It's like, it's gonna look really weird, but I fix it in post. Don't worry. So there's that. As long as you're aware of it, and you know how to correct it, it works fine. But the only limitation I've had with it was that with the bright light source, it just has a weird meringue effect that you can't fix. So that's the downside.
Yeah. Something that I actually realized with astro modded cameras, which is a little off topic, but probably 4 years ago, I was up in the Upper Peninsula, woke up early. It was like my second to last day. I was drained from just being up hiking all day, and I grabbed my Z6 II that was H alpha modified, thinking it was my 7 II. And I got up to the overlook, put it on, set everything up, took my first picture, and I realized, oh, this is the 6 II. Well, I also figured out that H alpha modified cameras really help with fall colors, and they can really make those colors in the trees pop.
They can. They really can. I've the other image from that overlook, because I had the comet one, but I was there a couple weeks prior when all the fall colors were there. I used the foreground from the Astro modded camera because they did pop more.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some extra added benefits to
Yeah.
H alpha cameras, but yeah, I mean, I agree with, I share the same opinion of, if you want to go down that road, it's 100% up to the individual and how serious they want to go. But as you were saying that, it actually reminded me of a friend of mine out in Colorado who initially he went full spectrum, and then he actually ended up ultimately going and sending the camera back to Spencer's to have them convert it to H alpha plus visible, because he was like, I just hate swapping filters to have to target different wavelengths in the sky. So
It gets a little tedious, especially if you're because if it's not a Canon, like most of the filters are clip-in filters, and like my H alpha filter for the Sony is a clip-in filter, so it's a real pain. Like when you're outside and it's cold and like clip this filter in and out, it's just like, yeah. So I get it.
yeah. Yeah.
But the Canons have a nice like filter drawer that you put between the lens and the body, and then you can just pop the filters in and out.
Yeah, I saw
So that's
that.
nice.
I wish that some other manufacturers would implement that, because that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be. But it's such a small market to begin with that it's like, you know, it's not worth their time, I guess. But we can keep asking for it.
Yeah, we can hope. We can keep dreaming, I guess. As far as like night sky targets that you would recommend to someone getting out there and just getting started, what if you could go back and, with all the knowledge you have now, go back and revisit yourself that night that you stopped and set your camera up in the field, what advice would you give to yourself as far as targets and getting started?
Um, Probably what we talked about first. Like, so light pollution is a big thing. Just being more aware of where you're at, because I wasn't at the time. And what I found with most people is they don't realize how far-reaching and pervasive light pollution is. So, like, you think you're in a dark enough area, but you're not. And then that can be a little frustrating because you're like, well, I can't see it. Like, where's the core? And it's like, it's still being obscured by light pollution. So yeah, look at light pollution maps and then actually just become more familiar with the night sky in general. Like knowing where the Milky Way is, for example, like, what the core is to the south, well, southeast in the spring and southwest in the fall, because that just helps you orient yourself. Um, like just some basic stuff like that. So you're not out there like wondering where things are and knowing that, it rises at, a certain time. So photo pills, like, download an app like photo pills because that helps you orient yourself. If you know nothing, absolutely nothing about where to look, that's a great app to start with. And then if you're looking for other targets like in the wintertime when the Milky Way core isn't out, Orion is a great one to target too. And everybody's familiar with that constellation because you can see it even in the most light polluted of areas. So it's a really easy kind of winter target to if you just want to keep your skills up and keep going. Because what's cool is all your favorite Milky Way compositions work with Orion in the winter because it follows the same pattern.
Yeah, that's something that's awesome about the Milky Way is wherever it is in the summer, well, it's going to be there again, just the other side of it, if you will, the winter Milky Way. And Orion is such a cool target. I've shot it quite a few times. And if you actually use a tracker and, like you said, a modified camera, that was the same reason I had a camera modified, was because I was looking for the nebulosity in Bernard's Loop and everything else up there. And when you can get that, especially in a real dark place, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a really, it can make for some really cool images and some really mesmerizing astro landscape work. Now, the big question that a lot of people have, and we talked about it a little bit before the episode started here, is northern lights and getting out there, photographing them. And we touched on some of the hype around them lately too, without going too deep, because we could do a whole episode about this too.
Yeah.
But, what is some advice for those out there wanting to chase the northern lights and see them in the Great Lakes region?
So let's see. The first and foremost thing I'll say is there's one app out there that is really good for like, especially for real time chasing, and it's called the Glendale app. And it's something you can't get in the app store, but you just get it online. And it uses magnetometer data. So it's as real time as you get. So it can track like these substorms like in real time, which is something no other app can do. So I will recommend that one first and foremost. And then the other thing is, if you're just up there and like what you run into is like you don't have signal. I will always point a camera north and just see what's being picked up because sometimes you'll just end up seeing it without even realizing it's there. And then in terms of photographing it, I usually tell people to start with your typical single image nighttime settings and then adjust accordingly. So, f2.8, 12 seconds, ISO 6400, something like that, for example. And then you just see what that gives you. Because with the northern lights, you actually want to freeze that motion. So you're going to probably have to go down to like 6 seconds or less. If it's something really big, you can do like 1 second or two. And then you mess with the ISO. So to compensate for whatever shutter speed you're using. So if you want to do 6 seconds, but it's still not quite enough, you might have to do like ISO 12,800 or something like that. But it's kind of finding that balance between freezing that motion and then getting a proper exposure on it, which is a little different than Milky Way stuff. There's a lot of similarities, but that is the main difference is now you're trying to capture motion versus not.
Yeah. That was something that threw me off the first time I saw a real Northern Lights show. I was so hyped and so pumped. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to set my camera up at 30 seconds and it's going to be fine. And then you look at the back of the camera and you're like, well, wait a minute. It's
Yeah, it's
all
all like a
just,
smear.
yeah, it's just like, cool. The sky is green. Like, what happened? And then when you slow it down, you can actually make out those details in it and in the pillars and in the waves and all that cool stuff. And, it's neat to see it in person, especially with a camera and get some photography out of the experience.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, in terms of oh gosh, trying to forecast it, this is definitely a big rabbit hole that can be its own episode. But the important thing is like the 3-day forecast is pretty much kind of garbage. The only thing I use it for is if they say there's an elevated KP like 3 days from now, that means they're expecting something to happen. But the thing is, the forecasting is so not precise. Like the timing, never go off the timing because it's never right. Every once in a while it might be, but a broken clock is right twice a day. Um, so it's great. It's helpful in that there's something they're expecting something to happen. Um, and then using the KP itself is it's not helpful. It is an index that is on a 3 hour average. So by time it shows up in like Space Weather Live or something like that, that was 3 hours ago. So it doesn't help with real time chasing. So that app that I mentioned before, that Glendale app, is great for real time chasing because it does track what's happening with the magnetometers. So that's as real time as you get. So if you want to catch those nice little outbursts, that would be the app to use. Um, KP, because we get this argument a lot. Like there was somebody actually at the Space Weather Workshop yesterday that was giving Tanya some crap because she's like, "Well, I used the KP for the May 10th event and it worked fine." I'm like, "Well, yeah, because that event lasts 3 days,
Right.
so it was going to have an elevated KP anyway." But that doesn't happen all the time. So if you find yourself up in, northern Michigan or whatever, and it's a quieter night, look at magnetometer data like that's in the Glendale app, and like you can find these substorms. You actually can see them quite often up there if you just know what to look for. Because they do have these regular substorm outbursts that happen throughout the night. So you just got to watch for it.
Yeah. Just be patient and
Yeah.
don't believe the hype that,
Yeah. Don't believe the hype. Just don't believe the hype.
yeah. I mean, I've seen it a few times, in different online forums and, the news picks it up. Oh, there's going to be a historic event. And
Oh
then,
yeah, I know.
everybody's lined up on the country roads and there's traffic jams over the Mackinac Bridge people trying to
Yeah.
get up there. And it's like, guys, it's not guaranteed yet. Just
No. And then it doesn't happen, and then it'll happen like 2 days later, and then everybody's like, "What happened?"
yeah. And it's always made me feel bad because, I've seen in comments, people will say, well, I drove from, Southern Indiana or Ohio or something all the way to the UP to see this. And then it just kind of fizzles
Yeah, it
out.
doesn't materialize.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's so much driving. That's such a huge commitment. And, you feel bad.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, that's how I got burned a couple times on it, and that which is what was kind of the drive to sort of really learn how this stuff kind of works to the best of your ability. There's a lot of stuff we don't understand, but it helps because for me, like I do have to drive 6 hours. It's not like a short thing. Like, so you have to be kind of sure that something's going to happen.
Right. Right. There's got to be some inkling of, at least I'm going to get something out of this. And, one thing that I've always personally done is, if it looks like there might be a possibility, I'll actually check the moon phase. And I think to myself, well, if I drive 6-7 hours up to the Upper Peninsula and the lights don't materialize, what other options do I have?
Yes, that is great advice. Like having that plan B I've done that many times. And so, of course, if it's during a full moon, you don't really have that plan B.
Right. You're kind of up the creek at that point.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's actually really good advice. I've done the exact same thing. So I always have like some sort of Milky Way thing planned or something, in case that it doesn't pan out like it's supposed to. Because one of the other things that we can't predict is the magnetic orientation. So like it could be there could be a nice CME inbound, but if it's the wrong orientation and it's mostly a northward field, then you're just kind of like, well, that's fun.
Alaska will see it, but not us.
Yes, Alaska will still see it. We won't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I will be the first to admit that, I saw the lights for the first time, I think 3 or 4 years ago now. And it's like, to your point, it's a very complex thing to learn about, to predict, to try to shoot. And I, with the exception of May 10th last year, that was the only time I actually went out and drove a long distance trying to chase it. Every other time, it's just been dumb luck on the side of Superior. Oh, look, there it is. Well, I can take pictures of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. Like the May event was it was, you know, it was, it was great because it was a very angry active region that just kind of came out of nowhere. Like it bubbled to the surface and it was angry. Like as soon as it like showed up, it started flaring X class flares and it did that for days. So like that event ended up being like 5 or 6 CMEs that were headed our direction. So it's one of those kind of rare instances where you're like, okay, this is more than likely going to be a big thing. But we don't get those very often. We really don't. And even October 10th, which was a flare, it was an ice class flare and it was center disk. So it was like pretty much a direct hit. But that one was a weird event because there was a coronal hole that was above it that actually kind of affected like how good it was. I don't know if you heard people kind of complain a little bit because that week was actually really good. In particular, like October 6th, 7th, and 8th all had really great displays. And people were saying that the October 10th one didn't feel as good as some of those other ones. And it was so, I mean, this is getting more technical, but um it had a very, very south negative BZ for like a long time. It was like minus 44 for hours. But the problem when that happens is it throws the whole magnetosphere into like a steady state convection where like the energy coming in equals the energy coming out. So then you're stuck with this kind of band that doesn't really do anything. However, there's tipping points. Like it only lasts so many hours. So every 3 hours, you'd get like an expansion period. And if you look back in the data, you'd see it like almost every 3 hours to a T, you have like this outburst that was quite good. But because of it, but they were only short lived. There was like 15 minutes maybe. And then it would go back to this band that just kind of sat there and did nothing. So that's something called a sawtooth event is when it does that. So people were like, well, the data was so good, but it didn't feel like it was doing anything. And that's why it was actually stuck in a convective pattern. And from what I understood from the paper that was written on it, some of it was because of the coronal hole that was above it kind of compressed some of the magnetic field line, like where it wasn't as good as it could have been. So even in instances like that, like where you're like, hey, this is a direct hit, and it still was good. I mean, I got him over the Chicago skyline, which was interesting enough, but it was like that little 15-minute window. Like, and if you weren't there in that 15 minutes, it was just like, it just went all in the light pollution. So, yeah. So even with these events that seem like they might be really, really great, sometimes they're not as what you think they're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, follow the experts. And actually, for everybody listening out there, whenever I get an inkling of, hey, there's going to be a Northern Lights event, I actually go and I look on your Instagram feed or your Facebook page, because usually you have information out there about what's going on. And it's like, it's clear, it's informative, and it tells you exactly what's happening, as opposed to, the media outlets just, oh my gosh, go outside tonight because your sky is going to be glowing. And not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily. So good. I'm glad that that stuff's becoming more helpful because that's what me and Tanya and Christian are trying to do with the podcast that we do, the Space Weather Unplugged thing, is like trying to just inform people that this stuff is a lot. It's very complicated, and like, we have this much understanding of it. We're starting to get more. But and that all these events are different. They're all dynamic. So like one flare will never be the same as another one. One storm will never be the same. You can have different things influencing it that change the outcome. So it's like it's to me it's important to be like, to tame the hype down a little bit. So you don't end up with like instances like this past weekend where people were like expecting this big thing and it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It just didn't happen. Yeah.
It just, yeah, the CME ended up hitting Sunday, but it was very weak. It just didn't do much. It's because it was always a glancing blow. Like even if you look down, there's a scoreboard you can go to, like look at where the scientists say. And here's the funny thing about it. Even the scientists that did the modeling were like, hey, we don't know, because usually they use a couple satellites to triangulate the trajectory. But the one satellite wasn't available during that time. It had a whole bunch of data gaps, which is another problem we have with a lot of these satellites is data gaps. So they're like, we are really unsure about this one. Like we don't really know. And the speed was really high for some reason for something that was really faint. And they're questioning that. So the whole event was like a question mark, but the media just ran with it.
They just decided, you know what? We're going to get some views today.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And it's like, well, I don't know. So it ended up being very weak. What's coming through now is a bit more potent with the coronal hole. But even then, I haven't checked it lately, but it looked like it was mostly northward field the last like couple hours. But this is more potent than what came through on Sunday.
Better chances.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, hopefully the listeners can, get out there and see it themselves. And, we've talked about a lot of different things and, referenced a lot of the resources that you have. How can people follow you, find you out there on social media, and find your podcast too?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it's called Space Weather Unplugged, and it's through my YouTube channel. It's Shelby Diamond Star. I think you can type in either or it'll bring it up. I'm not that versed in the podcast universe yet, so I haven't figured out like how to do it on Skype or whatever they know. Spotify, I guess, is the other one. So we just do them on YouTube. And then everything else is under that Shelby Diamond Star name. So on Facebook, Instagram, actually Twitter. I don't use Twitter that much, but I'm on there. But it's M Kiczenski on Twitter. So those are the main social media outlets. But yeah, you can message me anytime, and I'll try to direct you in the right path when it comes to the space weather stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and, just the stuff that you share, from your images to, you know, the resources and the information, it's helped me in the past. And, you're, like we said at the beginning of the episode, or like I said at the beginning of the episode, your work's always been inspirational and just drives you to get out there and try and experiment and see what you can do. So I'll include all of Marybeth's links in these show notes so that anybody interested can get out there and check out her work, give her a follow, and hopefully catch a glimpse of the Northern Lights and get some inspiration for the night sky as well.
Yay. That's all I ever want. I like hearing that it's inspiring to other people. So that makes me happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful work. No question about it.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you very much for jumping on this episode with me. I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll see you out there one of these since we've been close a few times.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, we've missed each other by like probably 10 minutes in some areas. Like,
probably. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I mean, it was this past October or the October before. you had, like I said, you had shot Oak and Deacon, and I was literally leaving Bond Falls and heading that way that night. And for whatever reason, I got sidetracked somewhere between the two. And by the time I was done, it was like 3:30 in the morning. I was like, I'm just going back. I'm going back to camp. I'm tired. But it's crazy,
Yeah, it's
small world.
crazy. Yeah, very small world, especially in this little Great Lakes region.
Yeah, yeah. Another huge thank you to Marybeth for joining us on this episode. It was a great discussion. You can find links to Marybeth's work included in the show notes below. Make sure you check out her podcast as well. She's a wonderful person and a great inspiration to many of us throughout the Great Lakes and beyond. In the next episode, we are going to dive even further into aurora chasing as we discuss chasing the northern lights in the Great Lakes region and beyond with Melissa F. Kalin. Author, photographer, and founder of Michigan Aurora Chasers, Melissa shares some great advice for getting out and chasing the northern lights. From forecasting to gear, camera settings to finding dark skies, it's going to be a great discussion that you will not want to miss. Make sure you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platform so that you can be notified when the episode becomes available. Please do not forget to rate the show and hit that notification button so that you can be notified when new episodes become available. See you guys in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.